Jim, I brought something to your attention yesterday. I was watching the men's basketball game, and I started thinking about this team and whether or not that they were going to be built to win a MAC title.
Okay, and I didn't follow that. And you said, don't worry, Jim, I'll have it on the show. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to wait with bated breath.
Yes, with bated breath. The issue for me is, and we started thinking about this, and I didn't see them post up, I don't think at all yesterday, right? I mean, how many times did we see this men's basketball team actually post up the basketball in the paint, score in the paint with the back to the basket, and use a big man the way they should? I mean, you talked about Luke Meyer's struggles in the last couple of days. I mean, what are his numbers in the last 5 games?
I mean, I don't have him updated, but before last night, he was like 3 points a game, 2 rebounds a game, something like that.
And that can't happen from your starting center. You can't average 2 rebounds from your starting center.
Yeah, he doesn't play like heavy starter minutes either. He plays like 17 to 20.
Right, 17, 18 minutes a game.
Right.
Still, no back-to-the-basket offense for this Chippewa team, and I started to think about, do they rely too heavily on the three-point shot? And I ran some numbers, and they right now currently are the tops in the MAC in terms of percentage of field goals that are taken from behind the arc. And they shoot 47.4% of their shots from the three-point line. So out of all the attempts from the field, 47% of them come from three-point land. Now, I was wondering whether or not that would translate to a MAC title, because I think you can't win like that, especially for a team that goes on scoring droughts. We saw it against Toledo that they were able to still win, but they went on a 7-minute scoring drought in that game, and you can't afford to do that in the MAC tournament. Against Kent State on the road, they went on a 4, 5, 6-minute scoring drought. Yesterday, even, in a game they won at home where they are so very good from downtown, they went on a 4-minute scoring drought in the second half, and Ohio was able to go on a 10-0 run. I don't think you can afford to do that in the MAC tournament. I think it leads to something where you got to start to talk about, does this team rely too heavily on the three-point shot? And when you take 47% of your shots are coming from downtown, I think that's a big issue. So I looked at every champion in the MAC since the three-point line was implemented in college basketball.
Oh, boy. How long did that take you?
It took me probably about a half an hour. Okay, 1987 was the first year.
What kind of crazy program do you have? I'm sitting there going, all right, I'm going to be sitting there with a scratch paper in 4 hours.
Oh, we got the scratch paper here.
Okay.
1987, it goes all the way back to then, obviously 25, whatever it is, years. And not a single team has won the MAC title when they've shot more than 40% of their shots from downtown. And Central Michigan's at 47. The highest came back in 2009 with Akron at 39%. So not only am I saying that it's going to be tough to win when you shoot that many threes and depend on the three that much, and you can go in and out of scoring drought. I mean, you get cold for 5 minutes, and we'll see what they did against Toledo, Kent State, and Ohio. So you can't afford to do that, especially on a team that shoots 44% from downtown at home and 32% from downtown on the road. So you go into Quicken Loans Arena in the MAC tournament, and if you can't translate that shooting on the road and at a neutral site, and you shoot 32% from downtown for a team that relies on it 47% of their field goal attempts, I think you get into a lot of trouble. That's why I say this Central Michigan men's basketball team will not win the MAC tournament this year.
Gee, that's a bold statement, saying one of the 12 teams won't win the MAC tournament. Hey, to quote Keno Davis, I don't think anybody thought we were going to be here in year 3 of the program.
All I'm saying is you're not winning the MAC tournament unless you can get something down low more often and more successfully. You can't rely on the three-point shot as much as they're doing right now.
And I don't think that's unfair to say, but you have to look at some of those teams. How well were they shooting the three? Because if Central Michigan shoots the three and they're
shooting 32% away from home,
right? And they're shooting 45% at home,
44% after yesterday.
Yesterday. So what I would say though is just one slight rebuttal, because I agree with the number. You can't shoot all those threes and live and die by them. But I would say, how many of those teams had 2 guys that shot 45% or better from three that weren't primary options? Because you look at this team, and maybe this team could be an outlier, a team that bucks the trend in the sense that you have Josh Kaczynski and John Simons, who both don't need the basketball, don't dominate the basketball, but shoot a really high percentage. They both spot up different areas, wing, corner. They can get the ball and they have such a quick release, and they shoot the ball so well, and they are secondary options on this team. You have Chris Fowler, who continues to be the leader. I don't think that is a death sentence that they shoot that many threes. Would I like it to be a higher percentage of shots coming in the paint? Absolutely.
Is that part of the reason why we see these scoring droughts, though, in ball games?
Yes. I mean, well, if you do shoot the three a lot, sometimes on the road, especially on the road, it's harder to shoot on the road. I think every coach would tell you that. Now at home, and they didn't even shoot the three lights out. They had 35, 36% yesterday and still won. The difference is, can they win games when they have to out-rebound teams? And against Kent State, they didn't. But they have battled with some tough teams, Eastern Michigan and Buffalo. Can they win some of those games? You need Luke Meyer to play better if you're going to win. That's the big thing. If you're going to win shooting this many threes, you still have to get good quality touches going to the rim. And Meyer's production has dipped down. He was a killer against Northwestern.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the reason we're talking about his numbers being lower is because we know they can be so much higher, right? Because with Luke's game, he runs the floor, alley-oop all the time,
well,
shoot the three. I think he's an X factor.
Yeah, you said since the beginning of the year he's the most important player, at least on this team, moving forward.
And what does it say that he's been in like a 5-6 game slump, and they've still actually been playing well? They're 15-5. They're 12-0 at home. If they go 16-1 at home, 17-0 at home, and they do well in the road contest they play, they're going to be at the top of the conference, might win the conference. But you're right, that would be the one knock is people have always talked about with teams that shoot too many threes, live and die by the three.
Mm-hmm.
Your numbers support the history.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say
29 years, Jim.
Simons, Kaczynski, if they can shoot the way they're shooting, and on the road, maybe that's unfair.
On the road, their numbers are down too across the board.
Can they just go to Cleveland and like practice shooting jumpers at the Q, like in between
play
travel?
Play the rest of the home game scheduled in McGurk at the Q.
So they go down to Ohio and Buffalo later in February. Swing by on the way, stop at the Q, do a shoot around there.
Shoot around there
because you got to hit jumpers at the Q. Isn't that what these stats boil down to? They have to shoot the jumpers at the Q.
Well, yeah, in these last couple of years. I mean, and I'm not saying that it's outrageous to think that they can still win the MAC tournament with 47%. I just don't think right now at this point they're going to do so because I mean you see the numbers. I mean, down in the 80s, obviously teams weren't relying on the three as much as they did in the 2000s, and we saw that in 2009, 39% highest. I mean, there was teams when CMU won the title in 1987, 12% of their shots were threes. So obviously it's continued to rise, and we could get up into the 40s in the next couple of years, but 47% is a lot. And when you shoot 32% on the road with those numbers, I think you fall into those scoring droughts. I mean, against the best team in the MAC in a MAC title game, potentially against a very hot team, and it's always the hot teams that get there. And if Central Michigan can make it there, you go on a 5-minute scoring drought. See you later. I mean, you can't afford to have a 12, 14, 15-0 run in the second half and still win a ball game, especially in the MAC title game.
Well, certainly, but I think the one thing to say is maybe the threes and how many they've shot have accelerated the growth of the program in the sense that when you shoot so many threes, don't you beat teams that maybe you wouldn't regularly beat if you couldn't light it up?
Right.
So in some ways, them shooting all of these threes has gotten them to a place where people didn't expect them to be in the program.